Hello, hello. Today we are going to review a couple games with Gruul Prowess against Golgari decks. Always a hot topic. Golgari is quite difficult to beat with aggro. They play a lot of removal. They play Glissa Sunslayer. But today we are going to walk through a couple matches that went well with my beloved Questing Red. Double strike spells as my unfair win condition. No ley lines, no manifold mice, no innkeeper's talent. Just basically my favorite green red magic cards. So let's jump in. Lost the die roll, kept a one lander because I had enough action in the one lander that I felt like I could get away with it. Hit the second land, which was really exciting. Went ahead and held up Snakeskin, which is going to be pretty sad panda against this Liliana. So obviously things not looking great, but land drop plus questing druid, not too bad. We get to shock away Liliana, and then we're going to seek the beast. And our seek hits are not very exciting. And unfortunately, I just have to walk myself right into that removal spell. Um, Theoretically, I could sit around holding Snakeskin Veil, trying to protect my questing druid, which maybe would have been more correct. But then I lose that ruckus that's hanging out in exile. Um, Hard choice. Definitely, we're starting off with a bit of a sequence that looks like it's going to make the deck look bad. We'll see how it actually plays out. Lost this Swift Spear due to hand disruption. Sitting at 6 lands, 8 non lands. Not too bad, but it's looking pretty dire. Another Liliana comes down, and I'm in a lot of trouble. I can't cast this two headed hunter because Liliana can just eat it. And my opponent presents a threat, and I present a land. Not going anywhere fast. And now I have to discard this monstrous rage. And I draw an Emberheart Challenger. Game is going to end soon. My opponent actually only has one card left in hand. They did use Hand Disruption, double Liliana, go for the throat, and then I guess they discarded this Gixis command to Liliana, which is pretty interesting to me. But maybe they didn't have the fifth mana yet. Not sure. But we draw an Emberheart Challenger, and so it's time to go for it. Give him Double Strike and exile Monstrous Rage, which is pretty hilarious. And at this point, I'm sitting on this Snakeskin. Realistically, it's most likely my opponent kills Emberheart before I exile my card, both because they don't want me to have another card that could potentially be Snakeskin Veil, and because that Prowess trigger gets it out of cut down range. And so I just go for it. And that's the game, just like that, in one turn. Uh, Things were looking very dire. But from the claws of defeat, we just find an Emberheart, hit a Monstrous Rage off the top, and insane way to kick it off. Was not looking good, not looking good, not looking good. Oops, opponent's dead. Um, so that was game one. Let's check out game two. Spoiler alert. This one's not going to work out for me. Obviously, I could skip it. I don't really know what's more correct as far as like how useful it is for my. But I think it's better to just like, hey, sometimes I lose. That's okay. I'm not out here kind of pretending to be unbeatable. But you can see not a good start. Kept another risky one lander. Again with fair bit of action. Maybe it was too greedy. Um, but we went for it. I have a ruckus in exile, hoping to find that second land. But things are not looking good. This frillback comes down. They gain 4 life. We do find our second land. And I just kind of crash in for 4 while I can. Sometimes you just stick the damage in. Um, I've really like lost my ability to be super patient by missing all these land drops, which is on me for making the keep that I made. And that Gix's command messes me up pretty bad. Here, I'm trying to set myself up for this Witch Talker Frenzy to take care of Frillback. So I play out my dudes, and my opponent brings in another Gix's command. And so, uh, what are you going to do, right? Uh, removal, Frillback, command. Uh, pretty, pretty tough curve. If I hit my land drops, maybe we beat it. Always hard to say, but uh, yeah, that was a risky keep. You could easily kind of call that user error. In my opponent, they just went off. Anyway, game 3, we're on the play, and I didn't yet talk about actually how I sideboard this matchup, but I do take out the Audacities and the Twinferno for 3 Witch Talker Frenzy. I just want some premium removal, especially for Glissa. But they also play, other big fat threats like Sheoldred, Aclazots, or the one that gives things -2/-2. And take away a few of the cards that depend on bodies, just because, as we all know, it's hard to resolve those in this matchup. So we're taking it slow. We're taking advantage of plot, using our mana and not letting our opponent interact. We just plot again. Opponent is just kind of, stun locked here. They can't do anything for fear of dying. And we just plot the third slick shot. They're still not using their mana. And we're generally fine with that because Seek the Beast is coming. That's one of the coolest parts of this deck. Like, my opponent, just kind of like consider for me. It's turn 6 now. So for the first 5 turn cycles, my opponent has done nothing. And they're kind of locked into doing nothing because I go plot slick shot, plot slick shot, plot slick shot. And so spending your mana is really dangerous. And then I seek the beast. So like I'm kind of doing nothing, but I'm actually doing something every turn. We're building up the bomb. So here I'm gonna play out the questing druid that I hit off of Seek the Beast, and then I'm just gonna plot Ruckus. I decide not to go for it, just because I don't really have enough mana, especially with this rock face. Blot out comes down. Play out a new druid. Still not going for it. Just putting more bodies on the table. And now my opponent only has 3 mana. They spent 3 whole mana to get rid of that questing druid. And so now with them only having 3 mana left, I am definitely ready to go for it. Enjoying the second snakeskin was just like, you know, uh, icing on the cake. But they concede here. We essentially had, infinite damage though. At this point, with only 3 mana, Monstrous Rage counters cut down, so they can really only have, 1 premium removal spell and a cut down. And we end up dealing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then these are going to be 6 each, right? So that's 11. That's 17. Monstrous Rage is going to be about another 9. So we've got 26. And then we can cast a Shock for another 8, and it's 34. Which you'll hear me talk about, don't get too distracted trying to deal way more damage than you need to. But also part of the point here is that, say even one Slick Shot did die. My opponent would still die. It's just too much damage. And so we just play as patient as possible. We really want to hit those Slick Shots in Druids to be able to just keep accumulating resources without playing to the board. And then, you can start to throw a little bit of this out, throw a little bit of that out, start to force your opponent to spend their resources. And then eventually everybody starts trying to win the game. And casting this Liliana, my opponent died with 4 cards in hand. They could have been 4 removal spells. I don't know. Could have been 4 lands, but look at all these lands. But by overloading them in a single turn, they only have so much mana. So yeah, that was against the more classic Golgari Midrange, and then this next match was against Seth Manfield's Golgari Ramp, or at least something very close to it. I think definitely seemed more rampy than classic midrange. But sideboard plan remained the same. I'll have to play against that deck a little more to decide if I should do something different. But for now, game 1, into this tap land, I'm just gonna toss out the double strike. I'm already seeing a bunch of lands, and so I anticipate casting Two-Headed Hunter eventually. May as well just get 3 extra damage and stick him in exile, and I'll cast him later. And you'll notice here, Duress hitting Two-Headed Hunter and Questing Druid. One of the amazing parts about this particular deck, especially in this Duress meta, is that my instants and sorceries are not Duress eligible. Seek the Beast and Twice the Rage are the kind of main sides of these 2 cards, and Duress can't hit them, which is both funny and powerful. Here, pretty good draw. Just get another threat, run it out, deal 3. I got Seek the Beast, I got a Hunter, I got another double strike spell. I'm feeling good. In this case, we don't attack. Pushing 2 damage doesn't get us much. But I'm not very worried about this Glissa because I have a wide team. I'm going to get a couple cards off this Questing Druid, and then I have a Two-Headed Hunter for whatever they don't block. And so I don't remember what we hit here. Snakeskin is good enough, and we draw a Monstrous Rage off the top, and so we just do the thing. Monstrous Rage, with 1 black mana, cut down is the best they can represent. Monstrous Rage also counters cut down, so it's either Snakeskin or Monstrous Rage is pretty great there. I didn't go for the overkill and resolve Snakeskin to deal even more damage, but Glissa can only block 1 creature, so yeah, that was a pretty good one. Up the Beanstalk is a nice card to see in that matchup, as well as Duress into my hand of instants that aren't instants. Let's go to game 2. Obviously, you can see there's a game 3. So once again, game 2 is not going to go the way that we would like, but let's check it out. Pretty reasonable keep. plot that ruckus. Opponent's going to keep mana up, and so we won't really be able to cast the ruckus. You can kind of see already we're drawing a lot of land, so I actually don't even cast the Swift Spear here. Tossing my only threat into, what has got to be a removal spell is not going to win me the game here. And so I just play patient, and unfortunately, that's my 6th land in 10 cards. Hard to win that way. But we keep playing. Pillage the Bog. Opponent goes 8 deep, so we know they've got some goods in their hand for sure. But I just have to keep land passing. No protection spell. No backup threats. We're in a tough spot. That's for sure. But as we've seen multiple times already on this video, the deck can just kill from nothing. So we just stack up resources, and both players doing nothing means that we definitely have a chance here. I believe, I'll just say that even though my opponent had all that open mana, having 2 threats, I do remember considering going for it, but my opponent they were playing super, super patient. It just felt like there was no way I was going to win that combat. And so here they play out Glissa and at least use a little bit of their mana. I decide to kill Glissa on my end step to be mana efficient. And now that they're down to 4 mana, maybe go for it. With 3 Snakeskins in the deck, you can't really afford to wait forever. And so I play all my Prowess dudes, and then I'm going to use my Demonic Ruckus to look at the top card of my library and hopefully hit, something good. Monstrous Rage ideally, but maybe Snakeskin is better, but we just find another land. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 15 cards. Here I just go for it because I guess I kind of ran out of patience and felt like I was kind of out of chances. It didn't really feel like at this point with my opponent having so many lands, the cottages. I figured they had it, but felt out of the game if I didn't go for it. So, but game 3. We mold a 6 and keep a really good looking 6. Anything with Monstrous Rage, Double Strike, Slick Shot is really nice. Those 3 cards alone are 16, and it just means plotting a Slick Shot means dealing 16 if we ever get an open lane. Now Duress this time does hit something. Tis the way it goes. And into my opponent's mana, I decide to just try to buff a Heartfire hero. Maybe the right play would have been to Seek the Beast there, but forcing them to use some of their removal felt like the right thing to do. And Seek the Beast here hits Mountain Swift Spear. Pretty weak. But we get to run out our Druid. Swift Spear makes him a 2/2. It's definitely not Slick Shot time. So we just attack for 1 and go, In this case, I have many more lands than my opponent, but them being on 3 means that they're pretty strapped for, being able to compete with a big turn. And so I'm just hoping to find some nod lands and make something happen. Unfortunately, we did not find a nod land. So I just fire up Ridgeline. My opponent lets me attack, buff my Swift Spear and untap it. and then they cast their removal spell. I don't know quite what they were. Maybe they just thinking about trying to blow out a buff. Um, but in any case, we got in a little free damage, and here comes Glissa. And with only one mana available, unfortunately, um, you know, I didn't hit anything particularly exciting. I'm going to be able to buff up this Heartfire. I'm trying to remember what exactly my opponent's tell was that made me think that they didn't have the cut down. Um, it might have had to do with their stops, which can be a little bit precarious. Um, but I often try to read people one way or another, with more than just their precise game actions, and uh, I it didn't feel like my opponent had the cut down, and so I went for the 6 damage, buff Heartfire Hero and pass, and um, it kind of worked out, and then drawing Questing Druid here was pretty great. Seek the Beast to see what I can find certainly felt like the right move, and then we hit some good ones. We hit Ruckus and Monstrous Rage. Uh, pretty pretty good deal. And so I Ruckus up the Heartfire Hero to try and find out if my opponent has a removal spell, because obviously they can't let that resolve. Um, that means that Heartfire Hero is going to connect, and if Heartfire Hero ever dies, my opponent's probably going to die. And so I start with that, and they let it resolve. And so I'm feeling really good. A little confused because I'm having a hard time believing my opponent doesn't have removal. Turns out they didn't realize Ruckus has trample, or Ruckus gives menace. Um, Ruckus is one of those really good and really underrated cards that actually continues to overperform, in part because it's underrated and people don't play it as much, and they let it resolve. Your opponents let it resolve, and they're like, yeah, sure. It's Might of the Meek, but an enchantment. It's not. There's a lot more text on that. So the menace comes in pretty clutch here. My opponent has the end. They decide to take down all my slick shots, or I don't remember if they took down all my slick shots, but now I have a free lane to resolve the Monstrous Rage. They're at 2, and I have a big Heartfire Hero, and so in the end, they decide that they'll take fate into their own hands and just kill my Heartfire and kill themselves. Yeah. So that is a couple quick wins against Golgari. We got the classic midrange. We got the newer rampy edition. But typical red player, I think, is gonna look at this graveyard and be pretty annoyed at duress. Go for the throat. Go for the throat. Anoint the end. Go for the throat. Um, but we won that one pretty handily. Despite drawing a bunch of lands, we got a Restless Ridgeline exiled. But that's the really cool thing about this deck. It only takes one good turn for the most part. And the turn doesn't have to happen in the first 3 turns. And the turn doesn't have to be dependent on me playing to the board and having things live for a turn cycle. Obviously, sometimes they do, right? But, we saw lines there with the slick shots and the questing druids being really, really powerful ways to build up and accumulate resources without playing to the board and allowing Golgari to kind of rip up our board state. Yeah. Thanks for watching.